You're listening to Revenge of the Drive-In, the podcast where Jim and Patrick watch and discuss a drive-in double feature, consisting of horror films, spy films, exploitation movies, erotic thrillers, sex comedies, and the like. Our ultimate goal is to determine if these two movies, randomly selected from a list of over 1,600, would make for a good drive-in double feature. We will be going through the plots of these movies in detail, so if you're concerned about spoilers, feel free to check them out before listening to us, and we'll be sure to point out if and when these films are available on various streaming services. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for any updates. That's at Drive-In Podcast, no underscores, hyphens, or spaces. And let's get started. I'm your host, Patrick, and I'm joined by...
Jim.
All right. The Invisible Man and Dolemite, two classics of very different genres, very different eras, very different, well, pretty much everything. I don't think they're too comparable in a lot of ways, but...
Yeah, I think you can say that again.
Yeah. Unless you have anything else to say before we start, let's just jump right into James Whale's The Invisible Man. This is where you say either you do.
Sorry, I was taking a drink of water. No, I don't have anything else to say there, Patrick. Continue, and please leave all that in.
All right, so 1933, The Invisible Man. This is our second film from director James Whale, who directed Frankenstein. He also did The Bride of Frankenstein and The Old Dark House. Those are like his 4 horror movies for Universal. And this one stars Claude Rains in his first American film role, as well as his first talkie role, I believe. But Claude Rains probably best remembered as Louis, the French... Is he like a police officer in Casablanca? What would you call him?
Yeah, he's like a constable or something, or French.
Yeah, I mean, he's great in that. He's great in this. Very different role. He's got maybe my favorite moment of comedy in film history in Casablanca, where the whole, I am shocked to find out there is gambling here. And then the guy turns to him and is like, "You're winning, sir." And he just takes it. He's like, "Oh, thank you." I love that scene. And I recreated it on Snapchat when I found a Casablanca-themed slot machine in Las Vegas at one point. Because I did actually win with that, so it was perfect.
Well, he was also Mr. Dryden in Lawrence of Arabia. He was great in that.
That's right. He's in that. He's in a ton of stuff. He's in The Wolfman. He's Lawrence Talbot's father in that. Yep. He's in Notorious, the Alfred Hitchcock film. And he's, he obviously got his kind of start, at least in American film, with the Universal monsters, because he's in this. He's in the 1943 version of The Phantom of the Opera, which we have on our list. That's our earliest Phantom of the Opera movie, because we're not doing silent movies. Because, the drive-in was invented in the 30s. I did a minor bit of research on this. The drive-ins did not exist in the 1920s, so...
Hey, are we going to do any Chaplin movies then? Are we going to do like...
he was around in the 30s, but no. Commie bastard. So, The Invisible Man also, of course, is based on a novel by H.G. Wells, the classic science fiction author of The War of the Worlds, among many others. This is, as far as I remember, a fairly faithful adaptation of his work, which would make sense because he was actually alive when this movie was made, even though the book came out in like 1897 or something like that. He actually had approval over the script. And I think it was something like they already had a script kind of like about an Invisible Man that wasn't based on his novel. And then once he agreed that they could adapt his novel, then they changed it to be more like it. And I want to say there's enough similarities. I want to say his novel doesn't go full supervillain, which is kind of where this movie goes. But there's a lot of stuff with Kemp and their kind of relationship that I remember in the novel that I read probably when I was in high school or something. But
before we get into it, I just want to ask you a question about, do you think it's like more exciting than Frankenstein?
I don't think it's a better movie than Frankenstein. I think Frankenstein just tells its story so well. But I do think, even just in the 2 years since Frankenstein, this is a more sophisticated movie in terms of what's going on with the camera work, in terms of the editing. There's kind of montage-style editing, which you don't really see in 1931, or at least in the 1931 movies I've seen anyways. And so this does seem to be a bit more sophisticated. I think you could maybe say it's more exciting. I don't know. It depends on, that's very subjective, of course. it's definitely funnier than Frankenstein. I think
Yeah.
you'll agree with me on that.
For sure. The only thing I would want is if we could move the old Baron or whatever his name was from Frankenstein into this movie. That'd be.
He fits more in this movie. He would
yeah.
be great as a police officer because the police officers are all like awkward and bumbling and
Yeah.
they just have weird performances. So that would actually make sense here. But yeah, because
Yeah.
he didn't fit in that movie.
I just want to say that I agree with you about the camera work, because that was what I was going to bring up. The camera work seems to be much more, I don't want to call Frankenstein static, because it wasn't, but this one seems to be much more flowy, and there's those seamless transitions from room to room, scene to scene.
Yeah, the camera's more fluid. Frankenstein, it's not as locked down static as like Dracula, the other 1931 Universal monster movie, because that movie it kind of feels like you're watching a film play. Frankenstein doesn't feel quite that way, but this one is a lot more, more excitingly shot, I guess. Also, we get the return of some fantastic miniatures, matte paintings, possibly, like all the stuff in the like the opening scene.
Yes, yeah.
That stuff's great. And just in general, this is a special effects masterpiece. This is a really early example of what Hollywood could do, what you can do on film with special effects that still, I think, looks pretty darn good today. I mean, you can say it's dated, but the invisibility effects are pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's only a few times when you can notice that their effect didn't quite work the way they wanted it to, but I mean, that's just such a minor complaint, because 98% of the time it works perfectly.
Yeah, I saw one string, which, again, going back to our scale of 50 sci-fi movies, if you see one string with an effect there, you're doing great. This time, one string, we're 20 years earlier than The Terror from Beyond Space, 25 years earlier, actually, and only one string that I recall. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I also like that they spray painted a cat. We'll get into that. That was kind of shocking. So the movie begins with a stranger walking through the snow, the heavy, thick snow in West Sussex. And Jim, when do you think the last time West Sussex was covered in that much snow was?
The late 1800s.
Yeah, I think it's been a while. This is the south of England. I mean, the north of England doesn't get a whole lot of snow, so I don't know about this area. So this stranger walks into a pub called the Lion's Head. He gets a room, and he's very secretive almost. And, of course, everyone in the pub immediately wants to know his story. They're all just, like, staring at him. You get the sense that this is a town that doesn't get a lot of visitors.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets his room, he gets a fire, and he gets a little sandwich. And the sandwich is brought to him by Jenny.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to point out, he's pretty rude about asking for all the things he wants. He's just kind of barking orders out at
absolutely.
At the inn staff. Yeah,
which is Jenny and her husband, who I don't know if we get his
whatever
name.
his name is.
That's a funny little relationship that two of them have. The Jenny is Una O'Connor, who is an actress I can't stand. She's in this and Bride of Frankenstein. Can't stand her in that either. She's loud, she screams a lot, she makes goofy faces. So after Jenny brings this stranger his sandwich, she realizes that she forgot the mustard, so she goes back and barges through the door after he had already asked for privacy. And he quickly covers like his chin, his mouth area with a napkin. And of course he's very upset with her about barging in. And as she leaves, he pulls the napkin down and we see there's nothing. Because of course he is covered in bandages, like surgical bandages, and he's got his coat. He made a point he didn't want Jenny to dry his coat. He wanted to keep that on, so he's covered in just stuff. When Jenny sees him eating and that he still has the bandages on, she spreads some gossip down to the people downstairs and is like, oh, it must be like burned or something. He's got bandages all over. And then a couple of the pub patrons are like, he's probably an escaped convict who hit his head on the wall as he was escaping or something. That's why he's all covered up.
I don't know about you, but to me, he looks so creepy in his bandages and his like welder's glasses and his tufts of hair sticking through. Mm-hmm. He's just such a creepy looking universal monster.
I love this look. And I like it even better when he's got the bathrobe. Because that when he gets the fresh bandages. That to me is the definitive Invisible Man look, because it's like, it's so classy too, because he's like, the other monsters, they're literal monsters, right?
Yeah.
You know, Dracula is a vampire, Frankenstein's monster is this reanimated corpse creature from the Black Lagoons, just this reptile amphibian dude, the Wolfman, obviously, but like he's just a guy. He's not technically a monster, but so I like that he's like this classy, kind of sophisticated. I mean, he's a scientist. We learn soon enough, and I don't know. I just like that. I like watching Claude Rains, even though, I mean, we don't know it's Claude Rains, really, unless you recognize his voice, because you don't see his face until literally the last couple of frames of this movie. Yeah. But I love him, the classiness of him in his like, smoker's jacket. I think it's like a bathrobe, but it's like, has that look to it.
Yeah, smoking jacket and pajamas.
So sometime during the day, he's working on his experiments, and we learn at this point his name is Griffin. And he's obviously a scientist because he's working on this crap. And then Jenny and her husband have to have a talk about him because he is behind on his rent. Jenny doesn't like him because he's rude. And when she goes up to talk to him, he ends up pushing her as he closes the door. So she falls down the stairs and she screams at him. And I mean, she does a lot of screaming, this woman. So Jenny gets her husband, who's very mild-mannered and non-confrontational, she gets him to go up and demand to be paid. And when Griffin insists that he doesn't have the money, but he's expecting a payment soon, then he starts helping him pack. And he's like, listen, buddy, you gotta go. That's when things get interesting. Because he gets a little violent, not super violent, but enough to get a police officer in. This guy, I think this first police officer might be my favorite because he's just so like, oh, so wish, and he's just like, he doesn't care. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't really care either. There's a lot of weird police officers in this movie, but this guy's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's kind of like the quintessential bumbling country sergeant.
Yeah, and so he comes in. When he and a bunch of other people, bar patrons again, confront Griffin, he starts taking off all his bandages and revealing that he's invisible. And again, the effects here are pretty great. I don't remember how they did all this. I know I've seen like stuff kind of explaining it because, I mean, for 1933, this is insane.
Oh, yeah.
This is nuts if you're watching this in the theater back then. I mean, now we've seen stuff like this all the time. I mean, we can make strings be invisible. Like if strings end up in a shot in a movie, we can just digitally remove that. But like obviously this stuff more optical rather than digital. It's just tougher to do and hadn't really been done before. But as he's doing this, everyone's kind of freaking out except for the police officer who's actually pretty calm, and he's just like, well, he's invisible. You know, that's the problem. It's like, what? And so then they all realize that, okay, we've got to get this guy before he gets off all of his clothes. Otherwise, we may never catch him.
The best part about this whole scene right here, Patrick, that you're about to say, is like when they go upstairs and they try to arrest him. One guy, like, he's just in his shirt at this point, and somebody turns to the sergeant and says, cuff him. And he goes, well, how am I going to cuff a bloomin' shirt? And I'm like, you literally just had the conversation downstairs that he's just a guy who's invisible. He has hands.
Well, I mean, he means he can't see the hands because he's a dumb sheriff and he doesn't know if he's wearing the shirt on his torso or on his legs. You know, he doesn't know where the feet are. Or, excuse me, the hands are. And this is where all hell breaks loose. The Invisible Man gets off all of his clothes. He is free now. And this, I almost want to call this a montage. It's not a montage. Mm-hmm. But this is where he just kind of wreaks havoc on the town. And it's like mostly innocent, harmless havoc. Like he's not murdering anyone, but he steals an old guy's hat and just throws it in the water. Yeah. He steals some other guy's bicycle and just rides it, you know, a couple dozen yards and then just throws it at some people. Like, you know, it's all in good fun. This is prank stuff. But I like this scene because this is where the movie really kind of becomes a comedy, because we get the Una O'Connor performance and she's very clearly not playing it like in a dramatic way. But yeah, once the Invisible Man is just kind of fucking with people, then you're like, okay, yeah, they are going for comedy.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of refreshing to see in a movie like this, in something that's kind of straddling both horror and
sci-fi
thriller. You know, I don't know.
And so while all this stuff has been going on with Griffin, there are 3 other main characters that we meet. We've got an all-star cast here. I don't know if you recognize these people. I recognize two of them. One of them I wouldn't in a million years expect you to recognize. But Griffin's fiance, Flora, is played by Gloria Stewart, who is the old lady from Titanic, if you didn't know.
No, is she?
Yeah. That is a long career.
Oh my God.
And then her father is the angel Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, he's easier to spot because he looks and sounds the same.
Wow, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, and her father, Dr. something.
Yeah, Dr. something or other.
Dr. Clarence is he's like Griffin's boss, mentor type figure. You know, they're doing science stuff. We don't really know what. And then there's also another scientist in the mix, and this is Dr. Kemp, who probably has his eyes on Flora as well. We see a scene later in his home where he's just got like a framed portrait of her, or like a photograph of her, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's this guy. This guy's a little weird. So a little kind of Frankenstein vibe, like we talked about with Dr. Frankenstein's friend. Mm-hmm. Same kind of thing there. But he's Griffin's partner. He's also a mentee to Dr. Clarence. And they're talking about how Griffin has gone missing. Flora is very upset because, I mean, this is the same exact setup as Frankenstein, really. It's the same script, basically, because in that, the fiance is upset, like, hey, I haven't seen him. I don't know where he is. And yeah. Yeah. And at one point, Dr. Cranley, which is Dr. Clarence's real name, Dr. Cranley and Kemp discover the notes of whatever Griffin had been working on, but they find that he had burned them. So clearly not wanting anybody to know what he's been up to. But they do find, Dr. Cranley does find like one word or something, and it's the name of a drug that he looked into. It's some kind of drug that takes the color away from anything it touches. Mm-hmm. But then he also finds that, and he says that that's all that the English textbooks have to say about it. But he says that there are German books out there that tell of a study in which it was injected into a dog, and the dog went crazy after a while.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. We've got twofold. We've got Griffin is becoming invisible, but this invisibility drug is also making him crazy.
Which is pretty evident at this point, I think.
Well, yeah, but you know they need to know what the hell's going on because they don't know he's the Invisible Man yet. He's just missing to them.
Yeah.
So Griffin then breaks into Kemp's home because he says that he needs a partner. This is a really fun scene. At first, he really just needs the partner to get his books from the Lion's Head Inn or whatever. But really, he's got like world domination on his mind, kind of. But this is great because we don't see Griffin. Obviously, it's a lot of chair rocking when no one's there kind of stuff. And he even lights himself a cigarette, which is a lot of fun.
The effects in this scene, they're all string effects.
Yeah,
they must be. But
there's nothing. I don't think there's anything optical going on here. I mean, the chair is easy enough to do.
Well, you know what I learned?
Cigarette stuff's a little tougher, but I agree. I don't think there's anything optical there. I think that's maybe I can't remember.
I looked it up, and it was for all the stuff when Claude Rains is wearing clothes. They made him wear like a black felt suit. And they filmed him on like a black felt background so that they could edit him out and then place him into the film of, I guess, the already shot stuff. So it just looks like he's invisible. But I don't know. Like I know very little about effects, but that's, I think, amazing for the time. But all this stuff that was just like string stuff, it genuinely looks like somebody was in the room, which was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they clearly have the cigarette lighting just because they're like, hey, this would be fun to do. Like this would have audiences shitting their pants, and it's like it works. It is really cool. I mean, the rocking chair stuff again. That's just easy shit. I can pull that stuff off. But the cigarette, I don't know about that one. And this is when Griffin asks Kemp to give him some clothes because he's thinking like, okay, you'll feel more comfortable talking to me if you can actually see me. And so this is when we get the bandages again and the bathrobe that looks like a smoker's jacket, and the bandages kind of look like a cravat, and it's just the classiest looking monster you've ever seen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He ends up obviously going naked eventually because he has to break into the pub to get his books, and he brings Dr. Kemp. Kemp is basically just the getaway driver for the most part, because Kemp has to sneak in, get up to his room, and just throw his books out the window. But he decides to fuck with the cops there while he's there too, because there's some kind of inquest going on.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same lazy-ass cop from earlier who Griffin did choke, but obviously not to death. He's there, and he's a witness to the strange invisible events that people have been experiencing, as are a bunch of other people. The guy whose bike was stolen's there. But this like chief inspector guy doesn't buy any of it, and he's just being an asshole. And then Kemp takes it personally as he's given the books away and he's walking back. This guy's concluding that this is all nonsense. So Kemp just starts fucking with him, spills all the guy's ink all over him, and then all hell breaks loose. People are running and screaming. And I think this is, as far as I can tell, this is the first time he kills anybody.
Yeah, this is, because what does he do? He picks up, the Invisible Man picks up a stool and just...
Well, he's choking him first, and then when he's on the ground, then he hits him in the head with the chair, and I think that's what kills him.
Yeah. Then doesn't he go outside and he goes up to Kemp and he's like, did you hear all that screaming? Yeah, I've just murdered somebody.
He definitely didn't say he killed anyone, but I think I can't remember what he said. I think he cracks a joke of some kind, I think. So at this point, the whole of England, or the southern portion of England, is on Invisible Man lookouts. There are search parties for him everywhere, and people are worried, okay, we'll never see him, but I mean, he does probably leave tracks, and they're thinking, okay, maybe we can catch him when it's misty, and we can see his breath, but really no one knows what the hell they're doing. And again, we meet police officer after police officer, and they're all really weird, and they all give really weird performances. Going back to the first one, who I like that guy. There's another guy who, talks like this. Every line he delivers is just the most monotone, slow thing. And it's like, okay, I don't know what his deal was. And it's very clearly, I don't think they're trying to do anything satirical here, but these are all by design. They're trying to make these cops be pretty damn bumbling,
Oh, see, I thought it was just that they had a bunch of American actors who they were trying to get to do British accents or something.
Oh, no, it's definitely not that, I feel. Because I don't think they give a shit about the accents or not. I mean, in these old movies, it's kind of like every movie, almost every old movie almost seems like it takes place in Britain, because you just have all these, the first kind of generation of Hollywood stars, so many of them were British. Or I shouldn't say necessarily British, but non-American, like Ingrid Bergman, for instance. Or they were just that British/American. They were kind of that transatlantic accent kind of thing. So I don't think they care about the accents. I think they're just these cops are comic relief is how I took it. So one night when Griffin is sleeping over at Kemp's house, Kemp calls the police with a tip, and he's like, hey, I've got the Invisible Man, he's sleeping in my house, get over here. And the cop says, okay, we've only got 5 men, and the game plan to get the Invisible Man has thus far been surrounding an area with an impenetrable line of hundreds of police officers, because they can't see him. So they're like, if we can't see him, we'll at least run into one of us and we'll be able to take him down there. So they have to wait a bit, but before the cops arrive, Flora and Dr. Cranley arrive. And so this is the first time Griffin has talked to Flora since, I don't know, since he went missing, since he turned invisible. And this is a fun little scene. Flora's, she's doing her, oh, you don't understand, this drug makes you crazy thing.
Yeah.
But then he's also doing his, he doesn't care. He's given this is a fun speech. He's talking about who's got power to rule the world. And, with this invisibility thing, we will have an army of invisible people and nothing will be able to stop us. It's very clearly insane person talk. Right after he's been given this heads up, it's hey, this drug makes you lose your mind. And he's like, no, I'm not crazy. And then he goes on this crazy rant. It's a lot of fun. And it's beautifully performed by Claude Rains. I mean, this is he's just the perfect actor for this. I mean, his voice is so commanding, and he gives dignity to some incredibly goofy lines and speeches that I think a lot of other actors, it just wouldn't have come off as threatening. It would have been only comedy. And this one, we're balancing laughs and genuine, threatening, dramatic plot. And I don't think a lot of actors around 1933 probably could have balanced that as well as Claude Rains does here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So he then notices that the police officers arrive, and Griffin, before going outside to deal with the police officers, promises to Dr. Kemp that I will kill you tomorrow at 10 p.m. and you will not be able to do anything about it. Which is an oddly specific. I would have been a little more like, if you're trying to scare the hell out of this guy. And maybe you're trying to kill him too, but you probably want to say, like, you don't know when I'm coming. You're always going to be looking over your back shoulder, but it's not going to matter because you won't see me either. But I will find you and I will kill you, like full Liam Neeson kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he says 10 o'clock for plot purposes, of course. And so he then goes outside, and it's kind of more wacky hijinks with the cops. This is where you see the string as one of the cops is like pulled away by his feet.
Yes, yeah.
And he pulls the pants off of one of the cops, and he escapes with only the pants. And he ends up chasing well, he's not really chasing the old lady. She's just running away from him while he's skipping and singing along.
Yeah, I loved that. That was great.
That's a wonderful moment, yes. So, the cops are kind of at a loss at this point, but they do discover they have one lead, and that's the whole Kemp being threatened to be killed at 10 p.m. They're like, okay, let's follow up on that. And they've got somewhat of a plan. At first, they make a point of not detailing it because they're like, he could be in this room right now, which is smart. But then they end up detailing it anyways, so it's like, okay, I don't know. It's like... I mean, I think a couple times they say we can't get into it now because he could be here. And those are like two different scenes maybe where they say that. But in one of the scenes where they say that, they still end up going into detail on the plan. But the plan has there's a lot of moving parts here because Dr. Kemp, they're trying to get him in disguise because they take him to like the jail or something and they swap him out. He's in the disguise of a police officer. There's also a giant net employed. And then there's also, because they discovered that, okay, we couldn't put fresh paint on these big wall things because then he would smell that and he would avoid those. So they put a thin layer of dirt on top of the wall. And they said, like, if he's up there, a little bit of dirt will fall and you'll know where he is. And then use your spray paint guns and, like, mark him. And, of course... In a moment I alluded to earlier, it's not Griffin that ends up there. It's a poor little cat.
it's a poor little white cat.
And then so they start spraying, and then they cut to the cat is like covered in like probably oil or something. It doesn't look fun, whatever it is, but it's like...
It is so covered in whatever it is that it is literally dripping.
It's dripping, yeah, which is why I say I don't think it's paint.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's oil. Hopefully it's something... Maybe
Unless
it's
they just
chocolate.
dumped a bucket of paint on it or something. I don't know.
I mean, maybe they could have. I don't know. Like, at least give the thing goggles when you do that, though. At any rate, this whole plan, appears to be working at first because they also have Kemp get in a car and they said, like, skip town, just get the hell out of here, get hundreds of miles away, and don't come back till you hear we've caught him. And so it appears that all that's going on until Kemp discovers that Griffin is in the car with them and that he's known about everything going on the entire time. And this is a really great scene because this is when this is when Griffin binds Kemp, so like ties his arms and legs so he can't do anything, leaves him in the car, and then basically just pulls the emergency brake and sends it over a cliff where it explodes and burns up, killing Dr. Kemp. Fantastic moment.
Yeah, it was great. That was a little tiny model, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because, when it goes off the cliff, it like one of the trees looks like, okay, that looks kind of like a model tree. But, like, the fire and, the little explosion that you have and the fire, that seems like it easily could be, like, a real car. But I agree. I think that is a model. It's done well.
I was watching it back, and I thought, I can't tell if this is a model or real.
Oh, yeah. It's a very good model if it is a model, and I believe it is. But at any rate, Griffin then finds an old farmhouse to sleep in. He sleeps in the barn under some hay. And the old farmer who's this old guy. I think it might be the guy whose hat he stole
hat.
earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's him. He looks like him anyways. But he goes in there and discovers that someone is breathing in there and he can't see him. So he goes to the cops and is like, hey, Invisible Man's sleeping in my barn. Go get him. And then the cops also discover that since it's snowing, this will be good because A, we can force him out because it'll be cold and, you know, well, I guess they know where he is because he's cold, but also, like, more importantly, the footprints in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, hundreds and hundreds of cops get there. They light the barn on fire. Oh, did you catch that? There's a little moment of, I think this is a joke. I'm not 100% sure, but earlier in the movie, there's a talk of, like, any information on capturing the Invisible Man. There's a 2,000-pound reward. In the scene when they go to the barn and they're talking to the old man and they're like, oh, well, if we get him, there's a 1,000-pound reward for you in it. And they specifically said that. They shorted this guy. They shorted this guy 1,000 pounds. I think that's a joke, but I'm not certain. It might just be a mistake, but I choose to believe that's an intentional joke there. But anyways, so they start the barn on fire, and the door opens, and Griffin comes out, and all they see are the footprints, of course, and so the cops shoot, and then they see an indentation in the snow where the body fell. So they rush Griffin to the hospital where they find he's dying. They said bullets passed through both of his lungs, but he has one. I don't know how
they'd be able to tell. They can't see him, but yeah.
You got lung fluid going around, leaking. I don't know. Some lung membrane. Oh, well, I guess the lung membrane or whatever would be invisible too. But anyways, yeah, who cares? So Griffin has one last request, and it is to speak to Flora, who arrives and talks to him, and she's there to see his last breath as he dies. He becomes visible, and we see it's Claude Rains and his giant nose. He does have a pretty big nose. I mean, it's not like a Roxanne nose, but
he has great hair. Yes, that
he does have
detracts
great
from the
hair.
nose.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, and so that's how he dies, and this is probably the least abrupt ending of all the classic Universal monster movies, I think, because they usually just like end immediately. Like the Wolfman is like werewolf dead, boom, credits. Like what? You know?
Yeah, this one we got some closure, so that was nice.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I do think the weakest part of this, the weakest stuff in this movie is the Flora stuff. So, but I mean, I guess you come back to it. I mean, it's not bad. But anyways, Jim, what did you think of The Invisible Man?
I loved it. It's such a great classic movie. It's definitely one of those movies that you have to see, and it's one of those movies that I love rewatching. I think I've only seen it about 2, maybe 3 times. This might be the 3rd time.
Okay.
But it's just fantastic. I mean, just everything about it is great. All the effects are great, especially for 33. Mm-hmm. The acting by Claude Rains is amazing. We've already touched on that. Yeah, it's just an all-around enjoyable movie. Even that last scene where all the police officers are surrounding
the barn
that barn
sequence.
Oh yeah, it's just great. It's so tense, and it's just amazing when you see his footprints come out in the snow,
mm-hmm.
and he gets shot, and you see that indent in the snow. You're like, wow. Not only are you amazed by like how cool that effect is, but you're amazed that they got him almost, because the whole movie he's escaped capture.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know, just a great movie.
Yeah, it really is great. It is very entertaining, and like Frankenstein, like the other Universal monster movies, with the exception of Son of Frankenstein, it's a really brief movie. It's about an hour and 12 minutes or something. So we're not wasting a lot of time here. You know, it's efficient storytelling.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie. I like it a lot. The cops are a little bit too goofy here and there. I think there was one cop that I'm just like, I don't like this guy. Everyone else was kind of funny. And then I think I think some of the, as much as I love Claude Rains, I think some of the supporting acting was a little kind of weak. I mean, I just hate Una O'Connor, whether it's this or Bride of Frankenstein. I just can't stand that woman. But other than her, I mean,
every time she screamed.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's really. Although I liked when when her husband was just like, shut up. Like, I liked their kind of relationship. where she completely, wore the pants in that she was the one who was like, hey, he owes us money, you need to go get it from him. And then I also like that she very clearly annoyed the hell out of him, and he just didn't like her all that much. Like when he had a bruise on his head, and she's like screaming as if he's dying. Like he's just sitting there drinking his gin, and he's just like, "Oh, leave me alone, lady." Like I do like that stuff. But I think the big three of the Griffin personal life connections are kind of weak. Gloria Stewart is she's just panicking, and it's that type of, and this is just more that period of movies, like the 30s, maybe the early 40s, but that style of acting, like the constantly panicking and worrying, like I feel like that's how all women acted in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I can't say Gloria Stewart's any worse than others, but it's just like, it's old. I've seen that a bunch. It hasn't aged well. And then I think her father, the Angel Clarence, just doesn't do much. And Kemp, his character is more interesting because he's got a lot more to do. But I don't think it's the best performance. Yeah, I guess he's okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, the person who really steals the show is Claude Rains.
Absolutely.
That's definitely it. I got a question for you. Don't you think it's kind of strange that James Whale directed a movie where the antagonist was not really a monster, or where, well, I should just say Frankenstein, where Frankenstein was kind of on the fence of being a monster and just
he's misunderstood,
trying to cope. Yeah, and
it's the King Kong. It's that classic thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But in this one, the Invisible Man is just such a fucking dick. Like, throughout the whole movie. I mean,
he's like genuinely evil. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's strange. I think it's just different. And I like that too, because I was talking about like everything with Griffin's personal life, his fiance, his mentor, his coworker, like that stuff is all like straight out of Frankenstein. Like those characters might as well be the same as Dr. Waldman, and I think Elizabeth was the fiance in that one. I don't remember the friend's name, but like those characters are basically the same. So I like that the villain here is very, very different, I guess.
Yeah, it was just neat to have somebody so, I guess, villainous, and somebody who was
very so unapologetic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I really liked that.
Yeah, he's wonderful. He goes full supervillain. I mean, he doesn't. I guess it's more just like his megalomaniacal rants about like how he could control the universe kind of thing. He doesn't like what's really the worst thing he does? Like, he sends a guy over a cliff in a car.
Kills 100 people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we skipped a lot of this. Well, but even that though, that's right. He does derail a train. We missed that in the. But that kind of montage sequence. He also pulls a Robin Hood. He steals money from a bank and just gives it to people.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so there's this. No, but you're right. I forgot about he derails a train. Okay, I'll take that back. Yeah,
he killed more people than Frankenstein did, for sure. Frankenstein's monster, pardon me.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but he drowned a little girl. There's no little girls on that train. It's just model people. You don't understand. It's different.
It's just model people. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, it was just great, and I loved the setting, which was kind of split between sleepy English village and then, I guess, Kemp's house.
Kemp's house is incredible, by the way. I don't know what the hell field of science he's in, but damn. Optics, I guess? I think they would call that. It's called optics in the book, if I remember right. But anyways.
Yeah, just great. All the stuff with Claude Rains mixed with the effects, mixed with the pretty good script. I mean, all geared towards old Claude over there. For me, it just made it completely enjoyable. I loved it. Okay, Patrick, I guess we're done with The Invisible Man, so let's move on to a movie that came out about 50 years later, completely in a different vein of cinema. You might even struggle to call it a work of cinema.
Oh, come on.
No, listen, I enjoyed it. This is no Screwballs. Okay?
Why are you hating on independent filmmakers?
I'm not. This is no Screwballs. But it is, I mean, it has more nudity than Screwballs, and that is Dolemite from 1975. Yeah, I don't think Screwballs had any nudity in it, did it? Oh, it did.
Screwballs had a shit ton. Are you kidding me?
No, maybe you're right. Yeah, I don't remember Screwballs that much.
What are you thinking of? This is a scene at the drive-in theater and everything.
Yeah, is that the only one?
No, it was everywhere. It was The
you
guy
get full
giving the
frontal
breast
male nudity in
exams.
this one. Oh yeah, that's right too. That did happen. Yeah. Okay.
Humping a pillow.
I'm not gonna. Okay, I'm not gonna retract my statement. I'm just gonna power through it. Anyways, Dolemite, 1975, directed by Rudy Ray Moore, who.
Wrong.
Well, sorry. Yeah, it was written by him, and it was co-directed
Yeah, but he
by him,
didn't
wasn't
direct
it?
it. No, it was directed by Derville Martin, who plays Willie Green here.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, and supposedly, and again, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix film My Name is Dolemite.
No, I haven't.
It's really great. I would recommend it. But supposedly the deal was like Derville Martin. I don't know if he's like a movie star, but he was like a fairly big name. He was in a lot of blaxploitation movies. He was in like some more mainstream stuff. He actually was Al Jefferson in 2 filmed but ultimately not picked up pilots for what eventually became All in the Family.
Wow.
So that's some rotten luck to eventually lose that role, I guess. But I mean, he had a like good enough career, and apparently, according to that movie, is Rudy Ray Moore. Obviously, Rudy Ray Moore is a comedian. He doesn't know a thing about filmmaking, but he runs into this guy and he's like, "Hey, you want to be in this movie? We'll let you direct it too." And that was all it took. Again, according to that movie, which that movie's a work of historical fiction, if you want to say, but
Yeah, I'm looking here. It's you're right. It's directed by what's his name? Derville Martin.
Derville
produced
Martin.
by R.R. Moore. Screenplay by Jerry Jones. Story by R.R. Moore.
Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys. That's right.
Yeah, that one, the same one. Rudy Ray Moore plays this badass
hero.
motherfucker,
Yes.
pimpin',
Kung
fu,
fighting.
learning, beating, yeah, pimp, you know. And
He plays the coolest character ever. Like this is like if you're writing a script and you want to be awesome, this is how you're like, okay, he's irresistible to women. He knows kung fu. He fights people. He's hilarious. He's a comedian, apparently. They don't introduce that until like the second half of the movie, but
I have something to say on this, but I'll touch on it at the end. Yeah, so you're right. He's kind of like the perfect cool guy. But unfortunately, this perfect cool guy is stuck in jail. And I think he's serving something like 20 years for...
yeah, that sounds right.
For stealing furs, like fur coats, and for possession of narcotics.
This is the best scene when they show the flashback to him getting arrested. This is my favorite scene of the movie. It's a shame it happened so early. I mean, there's good stuff later, but this scene's great.
Yeah, well, it's so great because it's so awkward. Like, Dolemite's leaving his house, and this cop approaches him, and he's like, "Hey, come on, Dolemite, open the trunk. I know you got something in there." He's like, "I don't got nothing in the trunk." He finally opens it, and it's just full of furs, and they pull out coke. And then there's this really awkward...
and then he's like, "Oh, that shit ain't mine, man."
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah. And then there's this really awkward kung fu fight where Dolemite just starts awkwardly kicking them. And he's not in the best shape. I'm not going to rag on him because I think he's cool.
And he also, more importantly than not being in the best shape, Rudy Ray Moore does not know how to convincingly throw a punch or a kick on screen. It's very clear in every fight scene he's in, and there are multiple. It's very clear to his credit, he's trying to make sure he's not hurting anyone. But he does not know, or maybe Derville Martin, the director, does not know how to shoot that in a way where it looks like he actually is hurting people. So It's embarrassing, it's pathetic, and it's wonderful. Dolemite as a movie, Dolemite maybe even as a character, is at its best when it's awkward. And this scene is as awkward as it gets. I love Rudy Ray Moore's line delivery because he's a very funny person, actually. I don't know if you've listened to any of his comedy stuff. I mean, some of it is literally in this movie. They like pull that from one of his albums, I believe.
Oh yeah, okay.
He is very funny, but as an actor, he's not an actor. He's
he definitely looks like a deer in the headlights in most shows.
Well, yeah, no, it's just like every line he says is just like no trained, competent actor would deliver the line that way. So even when he has like a funny line, the line might itself not make you laugh, but how he delivers it makes you laugh. Like in this scene, when these cops or FBI guys are kind of cornering him, and he's like, "Oh, that shit ain't mine," and then they're like, "All right, no, you're coming with us. You know, we're taking you down. You're arresting you for narcotics." And he's just like, "You're going to have to take me." It's just like, no one else would deliver the line in that way. It's just very funny.
And when it's like normal conversation, he speaks like this all the time. And there's a pause sometimes at irregular intervals. You know?
Well, and I think that's the comedy background, because what he did, I don't know if this was popular for other comedians, maybe other black comedians at the time, but like his comedy was set with like jazz music in the background, but he would speak, but it would almost be structured like a song where there's like it's like a line and then a pause and then a line, and I mean he would rhyme. And so I think that's why the line delivery is weird. He's performing as he knows how to perform, and as he knows how to perform is doing that comedy.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe he's just
that
awful of an actor. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, here I'm gonna give a quick rundown, I guess, of the synopsis, and then we can talk about all the great scenes in this. Going back to Dolemite in prison, he's brought before the warden, and a friend of his named Queen Bee, I think that's her name, right?
Yep.
They're both sitting in the warden's office, and Dolemite's going to be released because for years, Queen Bee has been coming up to the warden and saying, "Mr. Warden, Dolemite is innocent. He had these drugs and furs planted on him by some corrupt FBI agents." And now the warden finally believes him because they have an in with the FBI, who seems to think that these claims are true. So they want Dolemite back out on the street to catch these guys. But also, the crime in the area hasn't lessened, I guess. It hasn't gotten any better. Since Dolemite's been locked up, it's only gotten worse. And Dolemite's nephew was shot and killed one day walking for
Oh, yeah,
no
I
reason.
forgot about that. They mentioned that like once. They don't really go back to that, do they?
Yeah, no, they don't. So
I forgot about that. I forgot that that's part of the movie.
yeah, so like Dolemite's upset. So he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll be let out." And they're like, "Okay, but nobody knows that you're out of prison, essentially working for the FBI or working with the FBI, except for you, me, the warden, Queen Bee, and the FBI guy that you don't know." And he's like, "Okay."
And there's even a line that's like, "Who will reveal himself later," or something like that.
Yeah. Which, spoiler alert, this FBI guy looks a lot like Richard Pryor. Did you notice that? He's got the same hair, the same stash. Same hair, same stash. Guy looks pretty really tall.
But there's also another guy that knows he's out, and that's the mayor. But we don't talk about that yet because we don't meet the mayor for a while. But in reality, the mayor has kind of set him up to let him out so that they can kill him, I think.
Yeah, I was kind of confused by that, to be honest. I think so. Or no, he let him out again, right? Because didn't he pay bail? Because Dolemite gets arrested later?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, yeah. So Dolemite gets out. Oh, by the way, we get this awesome opening with this awesome funk song. This like awesome Dolemite theme song. But after, I think, or I don't remember if this is after or before. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Dolemite gets let out of prison, and these 4 women roll up in like a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something, and they give him clean clothes, like his pimpin' clothes. And there's a great line here where he's like getting naked essentially in front of all these, in front of like all the guards at the prison, and he goes, "Cotton drawers? I can't believe you brought me fucking cotton drawers." And he like throws them back in the car, and he gets dressed in his pimpin' suit to get in the car and then immediately get undressed and bang 2 women in the back of his car as they're driving him back to the Dolemite house.
Yeah, the Dolemite house, which like this took me a while to, because I've seen this movie before, but it was a long time ago. But Dolemite is literally a pimp.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not just like he's a pimpin'. Like no, he's a literal pimp in this case. He's also a comedian. He's also a nightclub / strip club owner, or formerly, because since he's been arrested or since he's been in jail, they lost control of that club to Willie Green.
Yeah.
And then he's also, well, I guess now he's sort of undercover FBI, but not really. He's kind of just like released.
Patrick, you can't forget, he's also a kung fu master.
I was going to say that, but I mean, that's not really occupational. That's a hobby. All the other stuff is occupational.
Yeah.
But he's got his like Charlie's Angels, like, because I guess all these women working for him, I guess they're prostitutes, right?
Yes.
But he also makes sure that they go to kung fu training regularly.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, I think it was when he was in prison, Queen Bee tells him, "Hey, well, you've been locked up. I've been putting the girls into kung fu training."
Okay, yeah. All
help
right, yeah.
with stuff
I
or
guess those
something.
two things are easily connected, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure where to go from here other than because there's just it's like a constant barrage of different and interesting scenes that sort of ramble in a direction of the end of the movie.
All right, so what's your favorite different or interesting scene? Let's do this again.
Give me a second here. One of my favorite different or interesting scenes is when Rudy Ray Moore is giving like that Titanic speech, that Titanic rhyme to a bunch of guys in a parking lot before running into what's his name? Creeper.
Oh yeah. We'll have to talk about Creeper, but yeah, this scene's great because this is literally like this doesn't feel like it's part of the movie. This feels like people ran into Rudy Ray Moore while he was filming the movie, and they recognized him from his comedy albums, and they're like, "Here, are you Dolemite?" And then he just goes like it doesn't really belong in the movie.
No, and it's like a 5-minute scene of him kind of rapping, I guess. You can't really call it rapping. It's rhyming.
It's proto-rapping. I mean,
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg and others have talked about Rudy Ray Moore as kind of like the godfather of rap.
Yeah.
Because he did the rhyming thing, and he set it to music. He didn't literally rap, I guess, but there's a common link between those two things, I guess.
Yeah, now, do you remember the scene where after he got his nightclub back, he's going to go out on stage, but he has the Dolemite dancers open for him, and they're just doing like this tribal dance?
Yeah.
That was so bizarre. Like in a nightclub, first off, they had like this performance by this kind of like funk band, but one of the dudes is wearing like, I can't even describe it, like high-waisted pants that go up well past his waist. He has like a silk cape, but he has these like bands that cross over his nipples. And then these tribal dancers come out and introduce Dolemite. It's just, there's just so much weird stuff in this movie, but I love it.
All right, so can we talk about Creeper?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Creeper, that guy? Okay. When we first meet Creeper, he is ordering a hamburger, and this is like from like a street food stand thing. And this is like the most uncomfortable scene in the world because this actor feels like he's not an actor. He's like on something, right?
Dude, he's jiving on some good shit.
Yeah, but it's so uncomfortable. Like he mumbles and he's like barely keeps his eyes open. And the first time we see him, it's like, what is this? And then later, Dolemite runs into him, and we learn later, I think his name is Creeper or Creep or whatever. But Dolemite first calls him like the hamburger
pimp.
Yeah, I was going to say the hamburger helper, but yeah, the hamburger pimp. And I mean, that's a better name than Creeper, first of all. But and then Dolemite has a conversation with him, and it's similarly like, this is uncomfortable. And then we see him shooting up heroin, I guess, in the scene. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, did they get an actor? Did they get just a junkie to play this? Like, it's so uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like acting. But then I looked him up. I mean, this is the only movie that actor's been in. Huh. But he lived into this century. So, like, most heroin addicts, if you're a heroin addict, generally you don't live that long. So, I don't know. I have no answers about Creeper.
Well, listen, I heard if you quit heroin, it's like it rolls you back like 25, 30 years. So maybe he's
well, it's also
so
just
long.
super hard to quit heroin, too. I mean... But at any rate, I felt incredibly uncomfortable. And when those guys come in and shoot him to death, I kind of felt good for him. I'm like, oh, God, he doesn't have to live anymore. That's good for him.
Yeah, it is great. I guess maybe I should go back to the plot because there's some stuff I want to bring up that directly references some vague plot points. When Dolemite gets out of prison, it's evident, as you kind of mentioned earlier, that Willie Green has taken over some of his territory. So Dolemite's just in charge of a bunch of ladies. He's the head pimp, and Queen Bee is his friend who is kind of like his second in command.
Yeah, Queen Bee seems to have just about as much power as he does. Granted, that's because when he was in prison, she had all the power, but whatever.
Yeah, but part of their plan is to take back this club that Willie Green took.
Correction. That is Dolemite's plan. Queen Bee has nothing to do with that.
You're right.
She actually suggests against it. She's like, listen, the club's in the past. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah, actually, she's got a great line because, like 15 minutes into the movie when Dolemite goes, how come I wouldn't have my club anymore? You fucking screwed me over while I was in prison. And Queen Bee responds with, me and these girls had to sell puss on the corner trying to save your black ass. That's one of my favorite lines. Also, sorry, hold on. I'm looking at my list of favorite lines. There's another great line, and it says, do you remember when you first meet, like, the Black Reverend? And
Yes.
Those corrupt FBI agents walk up, and the guy's a pretty shady character, but one of these FBI agents goes up to him and says, you haven't seen Dolemite around, have you? And the Reverend goes, no, I haven't, but if I see him, I'll tell him you're looking for him. And there's a pause, and the FBI agent goes, thanks, Reverend, that's mighty black of you. He's like, you don't want to look around, do you?
Yeah, what was he implying with that?
I don't know, but it was great. I spit my coffee out. It was great.
I enjoyed the first scene with those FBI guys because they again are after Dolemite, and they find drugs under the passenger seat in his car.
Yeah.
And and they're like, so how do you explain this? And he's like, another frame up. Like he yells it or something like that.
Yeah.
And then so they don't arrest him for some reason, and as they turn to like walk away, then he kung fu kicks them from the back, and he knocks them out, and then and then he dumps the cocaine all over them, but in a way where most of it ends up on his pant leg.
I know, yeah.
Because I think because of the wind, and also the pants are kind of like the bell bottoms, like a little looser at the bottom, but then he just like walks, and he just drives away, and like this scene was great. It went on for way too long, where it's just like once it gets to the like, can we edit this a little faster when he's pouring the cocaine on them?
I know,
but it's just great. Again, Dolemite is at its best when it's most awkward, and that scene is very awkward.
And I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but it's pretty noticeable when he goes to kung fu kick one of
the kick
agents.
to the face on the second guy.
Oh, he definitely misses.
Might not have been within 15 inches of the guy's face. Yes, that one's very bad. That's the worst movie kick maybe I've ever seen.
It's such a good kick. I love it. Oh my god, yeah, this is such a great movie. Yeah, and then while Dolemite's kind of running around and trying to reclaim a club while also trying to, I guess, move Willie Green out of his territory, he's just like crossing paths with a bunch of women who I wouldn't even call it he's seducing. He's just like, they're just jumping into his arms. But
yep.
At one point he gets arrested and he gets out on bail, and this I guess like this old flame comes to pick him up at the police station, and they just go immediately to the bedroom. But after they have sex, she says something, I forget what it was, but he turns and he just starts smacking her, doesn't he? And he's like, oh, you said that? I'm gonna fuck you really hard. And he just starts smacking the shit out of her, and then we get this sensual close-up of their faces as they're banging. It was just such an awkward scene, too.
Yeah, there was definitely an implied playfulness in their relationship that didn't really translate to playfulness, at least for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh,
I remembered my favorite line, possibly my favorite line. It's the same scene with those FBI agents when he kung fu kicks them, but when they first pull him to the side and confront him over the drugs, and they're like, "Man, Dolemite, you think you're just so cool walking around with all these black bitches that work for you," and then he just stops them and he's like, "You forget about the white ones." That was great.
Yeah, I know. It's such a dude. It's so bizarre, but it's so great.
And to be fair, I think there is only one white woman that works for him.
She's in the very beginning, and she gets her kid off.
She's in the kung fu seminar, or the kung fu lesson or whatever later, too.
Is she?
Yeah, she's definitely in there.
Yeah, well, it's weird because, a scene that we skipped over, or I skipped over, I should say, at the beginning, after he gets let out of prison, I guess they're driving back to his pimp headquarters, his pimp HQ. They're tailed by some bad guys. I'm not sure who they are even, but after he's banging all these women in the car, and one of them is a white woman, and he gets out of the car with like a machine gun, and these bad guys roll up and he blows them all away, and all the women get out of the car, but there's no white woman anymore. She's gone. Like she got lost in the transitions.
I guess I didn't notice that, but also this scene is so awkward because when they realize, okay, oh, Dolemite, we're being followed, And so they pull off the road, and it's like, okay, what are they going to do? They're going to do something clever here. But no, they don't. It's just Dolemite just walks away and I guess comes back. Like, that's how they get out of that situation. He just walks away, and then he comes back, and he's got a machine gun. Like, I was expecting them to do something, like, clever.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It's great. Another great scene, too, is anything with the mayor is bizarre, and...
Oh, it's High Pike from Hack-O-Lantern fame.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Willie Green is working for the mayor of whatever city they're in.
I think it's L.A., right? Southern California somewhere.
I'll allow it. I'm not even really sure how they got on the same page, but it was like the mayor helped get rid of Dolemite, so Willie Green, who was at first a friend of Dolemite, but then became a rival, so he could like gain more territory and money and stuff. And then when Dolemite's out of prison and when Dolemite takes the club back, Willie Green approaches the mayor at his house and says like, hey, I need you to get rid of Dolemite. He goes, yeah, don't worry about it. But the guy's just such a rat looking, you know, High Pike is just so weird looking. I'm not even sure what to say about him, other than he's the only male character who's fully naked in this movie. You get full.
I was going to say he has the most daring scene in the entire film because the camera just lingers there. He is completely naked. He's got a towel kind of covering his junk, but it's over his shoulder. So, like, all he needs to do is move slightly, and suddenly, you know, everything, you know, all is revealed. And it's like, It's such an awkward scene. Like, couldn't we have blocked this differently? Or just had him put the towel on earlier?
Yeah, and I don't get what the point... Yeah, it's so bizarre. Yeah, eventually the mayor gets killed by secret FBI agent who's not a secret agent, but I think comes across as a cop or something to Dolemite.
Yeah, he just kind of shows up in the movie at some point. He just kind of enters. He's not really introduced into the story, I don't think.
I think the first time we see him is when he goes to talk to the Reverend, who is also a great character. I like when you first meet the Reverend, he's like preaching against the cops and stuff like that. He's like, we gotta get out there and beat their rat asses and stuff like that. And then the FBI agents walk in and he switches like the sermon over to something extremely like Christian, like something in the Christian tradition. They're telling him to cut the crap and stuff. But yeah, I'm not really sure. The movie just kind of comes to an end when after Dolemite has his club and Willie Green has been killed. How does he die? Do you remember?
Okay, we can get to this because it's very unclear how he dies at first, I guess. But so this is after Dolemite does his comedy thing. This is Dolemite's former club, Willie Green's current club, which is now Dolemite's current club because found the money in the carpet.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's an action scene. There's fights. I mean, I don't know much about making movies, but I know if I'm shooting a big fight scene where there's a lot of different things happening, a lot of different people fighting, I would not shoot it this way. I'll just put it that way. Because there is like roughly equal time devoted to like 4 or 5 different fights.
Yeah.
And really, you got to pick and choose. You can't show everything, you know? You got to show us what's important. And the Dolemite stuff probably has the least attention paid to it, and it's all Dolemite shot from behind. And I mean, normally when you see that in a movie, you figure, oh, it's a stuntman. In this case, I don't think it was. I just think it's poorly shot, and that is Rudy Ray Moore, but, you know, they just didn't know how to shoot it. So he's fighting Willie Green and some other guy. There's an awful lot of attention paid to the fighting chef.
Yeah.
Too much.
The kung fu cook.
Yeah, because this stuff is like, who are these people? And he's fighting like Willie Green's cronies and stuff, but like, what? And then in kind of the main area of the club, I mean, we have more of a connection to these people, I guess, so I'm more okay with cutaways to them than I am to the cook. But it's basically, it's Dolemite's like Charlie's Angels, like kung fu girls.
Yeah. And
they're just fighting guys, and it's awkward, and it's embarrassing, and it's wonderful. But Willie Green and Dolemite, when they fight, so Dolemite punches him, and he like sticks his hand kind of like in the belly area, and then they cut away from it, and it's very awkward, and then all of a sudden Dolemite's hand is covered in blood, and he's like wiping it on like his breast, and then they cut to Willie Green, and he's got like exposed guts or something. And then the FBI agent comes in and is like, oh my goodness, Dolemite, are you okay? And then he shoots Willie Green, and he's like there. now it's on me and not on you. Or he's like, now it's not on your conscience or something. It's like, what? That's not how that works.
I also want
to... So I think as to how Willie Green actually died, I can't say for certain, but again, from the movie Dolemite Is My Name, this appears to be a scene that was highly edited around, because at least according to that movie, he literally pulls out his intestines in the scene, and I guess it just got edited from the final film. But again, work of fiction. I don't know.
I forgot how that scene started, or like more specifically the fight between Willie Green and Dolemite. Dolemite runs
that just kind of happens, I think.
It begins with Dolemite sitting down at like the table in the club because Willie Green shows up on the opening night of it being Dolemite's club again. I think Willie Green says something like, "Can I buy you a drink?" Like after they chat for a bit, and he goes, "No, I don't want no drink from you." And he stands up, and then Willie Green pulls a gun on him. And Dolemite runs into his dressing room, and Willie Green chases him. But when Dolemite gets in there, he turns the lights off. And then when Willie Green comes in, he just starts shooting at like the far wall. And then Dolemite comes up behind him, and that's when they start fighting. You're like, what the fuck is going on?
Although, I mean, I love this sequence as horribly shot and edited as like all the big fight stuff is. This is really fun and exciting. And it's kind of disappointing that this isn't technically the climax, because there's still the resolution to come with the mayor later. But like, this feels like the end, you know? It
does, yeah. Did we get the car chase when fake Richard Pryor was chasing the mayor to the airport? Because didn't the mayor run out of his house after that hooker killed his wife, and then he killed the hooker by strangling her to death? Then he ran out of his house, hopped in the car. Then the secret FBI guy hopped in his car, and we get this kind of car chase where they're driving down streets, and then they end at the airport. And then as the mayor's hopping into the plane, he just kind of pops him a few times, and he dies on the wing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I want my killers to have their guts and intestines ripped out by Dolemite, who's awkwardly kung fu fighting. That's how movies should end.
And you're right. Unfortunately, it did end like that. It ended in a kind of stranger way where Dolemite's taken to the hospital, but he still has this hit out on him. This group of guys, these goons, show up, and the plan here was that they're going to move Dolemite to different hospital rooms, so these guys go into the wrong room, and then the FBI agent and Dolemite can jump him and kill him, which happens, and then the crooked FBI agents show up and attempt to kill Dolemite, but then the real FBI agent, who's not a crook, stops them, and they get arrested, and that's how it ends.
That who's not a crook line reminded me of, how did you feel about the biting Richard Nixon social commentary they had in this movie? There's like 2 Richard Nixon references.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was so weird. I forgot about that.
You know, 1975, Watergate is fresh on everybody's mind and everything.
Yeah, was it the Reverend and the mayor talking about Richard Nixon?
Yeah, because the mayor puts the 2 fingers up on each hand. Yeah. He does that thing. And then I think it was the Reverend said something like, you know, if the president is allowed to do Watergate, like, you know, what does that say about... Yeah, I don't know. He's doing something, but I agree. I think it's in his sermon.
Yeah. Well...
I thought it was what America needed in order to heal in 1975.
Shut up. Well, I guess that's an end to Dolemite. A strange end to kind of a strange movie, but a movie that really inspired a lot of other blaxploitation stuff, I think. And as you rightly pointed out, inspired a lot of rappers with Dolemite's hot takes on the Titanic.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg's talking about him all the time. He mentions him in a number of songs, I know, so...
That's great.
Maybe it's just Snoop. I don't know.
Well, what are your final thoughts on Dolemite, Patrick?
Well, I enjoy Dolemite. Like, it's not a good movie, but one thing I actually do like about, like, genuinely like about it, like, not like as in this is so awkward and uncomfortable that it's enjoyable. I like the idea of, like, Dolemite being this, like, folk hero. Mm-hmm. Like, just everyone knows him. He's just, like, I mean, aside from the fact that he's, like, the platonic ideal of a man who knows kung fu, who's irresistible to women, you know, all that stuff. All that kind of, like, wish fulfillment for, like, Rudy Ray Moore kind of stuff. I just love that he's just, like, even just the name. Like, everybody in this movie has heard of Dolemite, knows who he is, knows the stories, knows the legends. Like, I just like that kind of thing in a movie.
Yeah.
He's this, like, Robin Hood figure. I mean, not like, literally in steal from the rich and give to the poor kind of thing, but just, like, He's like that legend thing.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of ties into something I was looking up, because I would have called this like a self-indulgent movie, much in the way that Neil Breen movies are, or I guess The Room. But I looked it up, and you're right, Dolemite was kind of this folk hero kind of thing where Rudy Ray Moore, when he was working as a comedian, and he'd already put out a couple albums as a musician, I think. And,
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and he was hanging out in L.A., and there was, I think the way he tells it is there's
some homeless guy.
Yeah, a crazy homeless junkie named Rico who would talk about Dolemite and like rap about Dolemite. So he took him back to his house one night and got him all liquored up and gave him dope and stuff. And then he just let him record a bunch of Dolemite stories. And then from that point on, he just kind of took the persona and ran with it in comedy circles for these, I think for 3 albums. And then after the 3rd album came out, he started working on the Dolemite movie. And I actually have a quote here from Rudy Ray Moore. "I wasn't saying dirty words just to say them. It was a form of art, sketches in which I developed ghetto characters who cursed. I don't want to be referred to as a dirty old man, rather a ghetto expressionist." At first I thought he was playing the Dolemite character like he wishes he was the Dolemite character, and like this is the perfect character for somebody who's a little self-absorbed. But I think he was doing it more as like a comedy piece. Whereas like somebody like Neil Breen is doing it because he genuinely thinks he's that person, Yeah,
I agree with that. I think Dolemite is a comedy character, and the weird thing is that I've listened to some of the comedy stuff, and I don't really understand. Like, some of that stuff's funny, but I'm like, what's the importance of Dolemite to this? It's like you could kind of just be saying this, and it's like here, it's like okay, but when you put Dolemite in a comedy movie, it's like, how is he funny? He's not that funny. What makes him funny is Rudy Ray Moore, because Rudy Ray Moore's insane line delivery is what makes this movie very funny to me, as well as kind of the ineptitude in shooting the fight scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess for me, I thought it was really funny because I thought Rudy Ray Moore thought this was the person that he wanted to be. But after learning that it was just this character, and he also played him as a character, not as somebody who he actually wanted to be.
Well, I think he does want to be this guy too, but I think he just recognizes this isn't really who I am. But I think there's a bit of both. Yeah,
I'll agree with that. But for me, that kind of gave more of that folk hero vibe to this movie, and I really appreciated it, and I it kind of took it to a whole nother level for me.
This is not my favorite Dolemite movie. I prefer The Human Tornado, which is the sequel to this. I think that's a better movie. I don't know if that's a minority opinion. I really don't. I don't know how people view Dolemite versus The Human Tornado. That great debate that is probably waged on for decades. But to me, it's about the classic Dolemite moments. And this has the "You're Gonna Have to Take Me," where he awkwardly kicks someone into the trunk and stuff like that. It has things like that. But that one has the real classic moments to me. That has The Human Tornado has the "Bitch, are you for real?" It's got the sex scene where the ceiling falls on them. That to me is what Dolemite is all about. But this movie's good too. It's got its moments for sure. Just nothing as great as "Bitch, are you for real?"
Well, that's it on Dolemite. I enjoy it, and you enjoy it too, but it's not as much as Human Tornado. I haven't seen any of the other Rudy Ray Moore movies, but I am
Monkey Hustle
looking
sucks. Human Tornado's great. P.D. Wheatstraw's pretty good. Those are the big 4 that I've seen.
So, Patrick, out of both these fantastic movies, which one do you prefer? Which one do you like more?
I like The Invisible Man more, maybe even a lot more. But I just really like that movie. Dolemite's fun. It's just, to me, it's not as entertaining. Jim, what about you?
I would actually say the exact same thing. The entertaining thing for me about Dolemite is how weird it is, and how weird Rudy Ray Moore is, and Creeper, and all these kind of side characters.
I did not enjoy Creeper. I felt so bad.
I know. But definitely the better movie, and something that was more enjoyable to watch, was The Invisible Man.
So, Jim, how does this work to you as a drive-in double feature?
I think it works perfectly. Just kidding. No. I don't really think there's much going on between these two, and I would struggle to find.
What does that mean?
Well, I
Well,
struggle
there's
to find
plenty
any
that
connection.
goes on.
Well, between them, yeah. But there's nothing that really there's no similarities that you can draw between them other than both being movies, And for me, that's what being a good double feature must have.
All right, I think this is a fantastic double feature.
No, you
don't. I do. I think you've got two very funny movies. Funny in different ways, sure, but funny movies. And I think just between the two of them, you've got the entirety of what you want out of a drive-in movie is in one of these two movies. Yeah, it's a 30s horror movie, so it's not truly scary today, but I personally don't find most modern horror movies scary either. So it's like you get your scares and your thrills in The Invisible Man. You get some laughs. You get to marvel at some great effects, if a little dated, but still great. And then Dolemite, you get your awkward sex. you get your nudity. You get your kung fu, kung fu is a huge part of drive-in movies. Like, we need more of that. And then you've got your weird laughs, both intentional and unintentional. You've got your weird Rudy Ray Moore yelling. Yeah, it's like these two movies together. This is everything you want, and it's only about 2 hours, 42 minutes. Like, it's not too long either, which doesn't hurt it.
Well, I'm actually surprised you said yeah. Well, because I was watching Dolemite thinking, it would be a great pairing for this. Game of Death. You see, you got two kung fu movies going at it.
God, we need to watch more kung fu movies. If you're gonna just compare any kung fu movie to Game of Death, the weird Photoshop experiment from 1978.
Well, exactly. That's why it would work so well, because it's this weird Photoshop experiment from 1978, and this is this weird blaxploitation
independent film experiment. Yeah.
So, Patrick, what are the movies we are watching next time?
All right, well, we are returning to Camp Crystal Lake with Friday the 13th Part 2, and then we are following that up with the Vincent Price horror comedy classic, The Abominable Dr. Phibes from 1971.
Oh my god, that'll be a fun one.
It should be. I haven't seen Phibes in a while. It's been a while. I'm interested in revisiting that. But yeah, any Friday the 13th, or at least any Friday the 13th prior to Part 8, I'm very excited for. I actually don't mind Part 8. It's just, it's not the same thing. But yeah, so that'll be next time. Until then, be sure to rate us on whatever podcasting platform you listen to us on, because it always helps us out. And reach out to us if you want to. I don't know. We're lonely here.
If you're willing, yeah.
Yeah, if you're willing. If you want to talk Dolemite, if you want to talk the Human Tornado.
Or, if you want to talk about why you think we're wrong and any conclusions we come to. I'm open to be criticized.
When did we come to a conclusion, really?
Well, if they work as good movies together or not.
All right, we'll see you next time.